was wondering if you also agree that President Trump should answer questions of this committee.
That's for you to decide, but he did know him well. And
I never had the privilege of going to his island, and I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island.
The real story of how power and the structure is interwoven to protect people even when they do wrong.
And it's, remember Pizzagate? Remember how they talked about pizza?
Yeah. What
Well,
about it?
here it is. It shows up in the Epstein files.
Okay, so today's episode is on Jeffrey Epstein, the files that have been leaked onto the internet. Have they really been leaked? Have they been put there by someone? Is there more to this than meets the eye? Has a secret satanic worshipping ritual cult that eats babies and are secret pedophiles and reptiles, according to some, really just been exposed, or has power and how power maneuvers and how it protects itself really what's been exposed? We'll explore all of that and more in today's episode.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
The powerful thing about this quote from Richard Nixon is that he, to me, demonstrates how people in power maneuver, how they move, how they think. They believe they're exempt to consequences and repercussions. Now, you may say he was speaking specifically about the presidency. I don't believe that. And if you see how people in power move, people who have influence, people with large amounts of wealth, there's a correlation. You can take that with R. Kelly. You can take that with people who are in the church. We see anywhere where there's power, people believe they're immune to legality. So they think they can evade it. In the case of some presidents, they are able to even change the law to bend to their illegal behaviors. Now, the point of me bringing that up was just to show that I believe that these files or emails that have been leaked regarding Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement as well, all the people associated, to me says more and has revealed how the structure and the system that we believe in, whether that is the law enforcement, police, politicians, media, what they do specifically and what they're really designed to do or been morphed into doing is protecting the most powerful and elites out there. And whether that is wrongdoers and disgusting, deplorable people and pedos like the Epsteins, or people who are just doing things to protect themselves and enrich themselves, that is what this system does. Again, it's important to say this now, that a lot of what we're speaking about is alleged. It is all alleged. We don't know what is true in terms of the conspiracies and the files. I'll go into more details about what's alleged, but I want to cover my back so I don't lose this channel. The first, to me, red flag with Jeffrey Epstein is where his wealth came from. It is so unclear, it's so murky.
Lay out Jeffrey Epstein's rise, the critical importance of the people he connected with, and the lies, the thievery, all that you lay out after, months, years of this investigation.
It really starts at Bear Stearns, where Epstein is introduced to a guy named Ace Greenberg, who was a top executive at the investment firm. And Greenberg and another of his colleagues, Jimmy Kane, who's also a top executive there, took Epstein under their wings and made him their protege. And Epstein proceeded to go on kind of this spree of wrongdoing at Bear Stearns. And time again, Epstein's protectors at the bank went to bat for him and basically got him out of trouble. And this was the start of a lifelong pattern for Epstein, where he would push the envelope, cross ethical, moral, sometimes legal lines, and basically escape with impunity because of his really astounding ability to charm people in positions of power and to use his leverage over people in positions of power. What surprised me the most was just how pedestrian some of his scams were. This is not someone who is hatching this extremely elaborate plot to con sophisticated people through all these like bells and whistles. He was just grabbing people's money and running with it. And for all of the attention that's been paid to the possibility of Epstein being part of spy services or running this really sophisticated blackmail operation, the truth that we found, and there may be more to it, but what we found was much more run-of-the-mill and kind of low-level than that.
Again, it's important to say this. He comes from no elite academic background. Now, that is no tell of you being even smart or you being someone capable. However, the rooms he is in, typically those people come from that. He showed no real financial, I don't even know what the word is, intelligence or anything that made him special that stood out from the crowd. He had no clear product, no clear thing that made him distinctly different. When you think of Elon Musk, you think of Tesla. When you think of Mark Zuckerberg, you think of Facebook. I'm yet to understand what brought him into this circle until you see this.
Someone who could show clients a good night on the town could bring in more value to the firm than some PhD quantitative analyst. Since then, regulatory, cultural, and technological changes, as well as just the overall size of the financial industry, means that the ladder is both higher and there is a lot more technical work to be done on those lower ladders. But back then, wining and dining powerful and wealthy people was part of the job, and it was a skill that Epstein clearly employed later in his career as well. Even still, just from the financial side, at this time, Epstein was receiving a total compensation of $200,000 a year, which in 1980s dollars was a lot. Had he just had a long, stable career at the firm and invested his money well, like he claimed to be able to do, this alone could have explained his $600 million fortune. But of course, that didn't happen. He abruptly, departed Bear Stearns just a year later, and although the exact reason hadn't been made clear, there were a variety of factors at play. He had reportedly lent money to a friend to buy stocks, which was outside of industry guidelines. He was also reportedly having an affair with one of the office secretaries, and he was also being charged by the SEC for a violation of Regulation D, which in plain English meant he was trying to skirt around public investment registration requirements.
All of a sudden, the dots start to make sense. The things in the emails that we've seen, the ones that have been verified to be true anyway, they make sense. This is a man who held access, who was able to put people in rooms, was able to maybe, allegedly, fulfill their fantasies and hold that as sort of bribes over them. But what he was good at was creating private spaces, facilitating access, networking. And in that time of banking, as you heard, it was important, it was necessary. But on top of that, I think he grew and established himself further and further in that, and became an elite hoster, became an elite entertainer, and that was how he was able to amass his large amounts of wealth. It's also important to do and say this, that was also probably facilitated by his capabilities to create back-end deals, which is things that were alleged with the Peter Mandelson scandal and Prince Andrew too. You see, middlemen at that level hold immense amount of power. And you're probably thinking, how does a middleman amount that kind of power? But where he's able to put people together, that is the story there about his wealth, his networking, his access. And the reason I bring that up is because it reveals something quite dark about society, that people who are able to put people together are able to amount that kind of power without having genuine skill, without having genuine nous in finances or whatever their sector is. And he was able to amass that wealth and quite frankly abuse it. But that is the backstory of him a little bit. Again, this essay will not be a depicting of his life and story. I just couldn't do that. But what I will do and go into details is about what this case and where we're at now tells us about the structure that we're in. And that brings us to the files, the actual leaks, because what actually was revealed there.
Sides of the aisle, you don't get much bigger than Trump and Clinton, with both men appearing frequently. Woody Allen, Steve Bannon, Noam Chomsky, Bill Cosby, David Copperfield, Mette Moret, Crown Princess of Norway, Sarah Ferguson, Robert Mugabe, Elon Musk, Harvey Weinstein, and Jay-Z. The list is astonishing, and while connections can range from being mentioned by a defendant to witnessing the island to simply an email correspondence, association sticks like tar. The point is, that Epstein's connections stretched far and wide to all corners of the planet. He communicated with high-level Russian politicians as well as their Western counterparts in Europe and the US. He was on a casually friendly basis with huge names in banking, tech, and finance. He had connections to royal families, scientists, philanthropists, and artists. It seemed there were few avenues where Jeffrey Epstein wasn't well connected.
Awkward transition. Before we get into that, please do me one massive favor. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe in order for the channel to grow. If you're liking what you're seeing right now, I'm gonna need you to subscribe. So please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on an episode, and put a comment on what you want to see next. But without further ado, let's get into the actual nuts and bolts of this case. You see, there's many correspondence there, some with, again, it's important to say this, I don't even know how much is real. There's been AI generated pictures, there are AI generated leaks as well, so you have to have a discerning eye and have a keen eye with what is going on. People are monetizing off the scandal, they're monetizing off our distrust of the institutions that we once were sort of taught to trust.
Emails drop, and Jeffrey Epstein, who worked on behalf of the Rothschilds, according to him, he wrote that in an email, the Rothschilds, who credit themselves with having created which nation state? Oh, right, Israel.
And as you can tell just from his background and how he mounted his wealth, that what we were told about how society runs and how it actually runs are starkly different. But the files have released and shown us that he had close proximity to Donald J. Trump, Elon Musk, Bill Clinton, who is always in a scandal. Again, really? Prince Andrew, nothing surprising there. But one that's quite surprising and one that brought the attention of the Brits is Peter Mandelson.
Next up is Peter Mandelson. Now, that name almost certainly isn't as well known, but this scandal has exploded in the UK in recent weeks after email correspondence between him and Epstein came to light. And just a quick background about Mandelson: long-term politician who really reached his peak under Tony Blair, who disappeared for a while, and now we know where, before coming back and taking the role as British ambassador to the US. His name has long been linked to Epstein, largely because he acknowledged that Epstein loaned him some money in 2008. However, over the past few months, a steady drip of information has tarnished his name, culminating in what appears to be Mandelson passing government information to Epstein regarding a range of issues. Mandelson also helped an investment banker friend of Epstein to secure a deal with the UK government, which again, not a brilliant look. Mandelson is sliding downhill and gathering speed. The police are investigating, and he has been exiled from the Labour Party. He might not be the #1 national disgrace just yet, but he is catching up.
This is just another example of how power networks, how power aligns itself. You mean to tell me that the man that was the British ambassador for America was closely linked to a banker who even at the time had been accused?
Now, years before anybody was really talking about Jeffrey Epstein, the courts had an opportunity to send him down for a considerable amount of time and really f*** it up. In 2006, Epstein was arrested in Florida in connection with 36 acts of sex with minors, some as young as 14.
Peter Mandelson, his relationship with him allowed him to become the British ambassador for America. Does that not seem like a conflict of interest that he has a close tie to a hedge fund manager, a financier? This is the kind of questions that I don't understand why the media and people on the YouTube spaces as well aren't asking. Why is that something that's become normalized? That seems like a conflict of interest to me.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
Again, one issue I have is that, and it's important to say this, the flight logs and the people that visited the island, there's an assumption that if you visit the island, if you were on his plane, that you automatically were doing something deplorable or illegal. Let's be honest, that's not necessarily true. So again, anything we do discuss is alleged. But there was the Stephen Hawking's case, which was debunked, by the way.
With ALS, who always talked through a robotic voice generator. There was an email where Epstein appeals to a friend, Virginia Giuffre, to disprove allegations of Giuffre's that Hawking had been involved in an orgy. To be clear, Giuffre never accused Hawking of anything, but his inclusion is without a doubt the weirdest name in the Epstein files.
The reason I bring this debunked scandal in is that there are so many scandals around this. There's so many people consumed by the alleged conspiracies, who was in this pedo ring as well. And if you don't have the examples of the ones that are debunked, that have no real correlation, you will think that everyone out there is just a pedo, Satan worshipping wrong'un and a part of a cult. And I think that is sort of the bright lights of it. It's sort of the smoking gun. And by that I mean, it actually distracts from how sadistic power really is. I'm not saying some of these people, whether that's Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, are not potentially involved. Again, it's all alleged. I'm saying that we're losing the real story of how power and the structure is interwoven to protect people even when they do wrong. That's why I started the video essay with that clip from Richard Nixon. But check out this, like I mentioned earlier, clip about when Jeffrey Epstein was alleged to have already first got in trouble with the law. That was 06. 08 he was charged, and what did the media do? They made it invisible. And some people may come up to the most glorious and grandiose of standards, or reasons I should say, as to why he did that. And I really think it's to do with one thing: the media didn't want to lose their access to powerful and wealthy elites. They live and die by that. That's what makes the mainstream media what it is, and what the alternative media suffer in lack of. Of course, things are changing. But can you imagine that it was fear and access that kept that story, that scandal, invisible and under wraps? By the way, Jeffrey Epstein had got into trouble before then anyway, yet this man was allowed to walk free and reign eventually supreme, only for a short time though. I don't want to do the guilt by association thing, although Prince Andrew, we will cover that. That happens far too often. But what I will say, and what was very clear when you're analyzing these emails and these files and this case of Epstein, is that even if in the most uncynical, optimistic world, a lot of the people were just there because of his proximity and they weren't a part of the pedo ring, many people knew, and ordinary people also helped facilitate it.
Ecosystem where people had to know what was going on. Drivers transported girls between properties, airports, and residences. Some testified that they didn't realize ages or purposes, while others acknowledged that they had an inkling but never knew the full scope. And then you've got to think about housekeepers, cleaners, guards, and probably many more that we didn't even think about. This wasn't just one evil man operating in the shadows. This was a fully functioning operation with a wide array of characters with clearly defined roles.
Now, it's important to say many of those people probably just did it out of fear of their own daily living. But this is what I'm hinting at again, and not even hinting at, now hammering over their head, that it's interwoven into the system. The system itself protects and creates these monsters. Now, the issue here is that we have lost complete trust in our media. We no longer trust the media. We no longer trust the institutions. And as you can see, they did more to quash and kill these stories and make them invisible for the general public, and anyone who questioned it was made to look like a buffoon, a fool, out of touch, a quack jack. And the issue is that I find is that I don't want to just label YouTubers, but if it's the Candace Owens of the world, they speak about these conspiracies, they discuss these conspiracies, but there's a lack of critical thinking. They're just creating cross connections.
To fight for custody of your own soul. Just leave me alone. Let me say what I believe and you say what you believe. Fight fair. Why do you always have to make this threat to bankrupt people? And I want you to know that those people, if anything happens to me, they have my explicit permission to release it all, detonate it all, expose all of these people in politics and in the movement who behave like this behind the scenes. It's necessary.
And some of them, they may be onto something. Some of them, I don't think they've done their proper due diligence. But the problem is that people are falling into trusting these media outlets more than actually trusting. Well, there's no one to trust. There's no one to trust. And what I will say here is that the media, we've lost trust in the media, but the alternative media, YouTube, new age media, what they're doing is capitalizing off the distrust. They are not doing their due diligence into these cases. Some of these files are AI images. Some of them have been disproven are deep fakes. and people are creating cross connections. There's a lack of critical thinking about what is actually going on. And if you look at these cases, all roads lead to blame the Jew. And again, if it was that simple, surely we would just cut the head of the snake and things will change. Surely, right? But it's not. Another place where you find this, I would say, lack of critical thinking, lack of true dissection of what is going on, is the film Eyes Wide Shut. It's a film by Stanley Kubrick, and the film really dissects a relationship with Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise, how they lose their intimacy. It's about ego, the collapse of the masculine ego, sexual fantasies, what it's like to pursue them, the real sexual underworld. And yes, there is a point in the film where Tom Cruise's character, who is a wealthy character, enters the elite 0.1 space of parties or sexual parties, and we see the famous scene. It's a haunting scene. It shows to the audience how the elites have lived in a different parallel world to us, where they have their debauchery, they have their sexual fantasies lived out. But often, and what we find throughout the film, is that their fantasies are detached from reality. They remove themselves from any sort of consequences, and the scene itself, they feel meaningless. The sex feels just like a power game. But people use that as sort of like a documentary of what really was going on. They use it as a way, as confirmation of things that happened in these elite spaces. And there are many documentaries that have discussed this too.
Group of fabulously wealthy individuals, you can definitely get a sense of how much wealth they actually have when they're talking about things like buying a fleet of Boeings in the lobby casually. They would buy out this entire property. They were spending as much as a luxury wedding. And it's basically a giant swingers orgy. We'd have people having sex in the pool, people laying on our wine bars naked, a couple having sex on a balcony in plain view. So you're looking up at it.
But my issue is, it's more to do, in my opinion, with the misunderstanding of what Stanley Kubrick was trying to say.
While some of these theories seem valid, many have been challenged with real facts. In one of the few interviews he gave, Kubrick downplayed the myths surrounding him. People close to the director said he never meant to expose anything, not in Eyes Wide Shut or in any of his films. In fact, he reportedly didn't even want to direct the secret ceremony scene. He said he didn't know enough about cults. That's why he handed over much of that work to production designer Stephen Routley. As for the masks, some members of the team bought them from Italian artisan Sergio Boldrin. This kind of information could have shut down the more extreme theories, but instead, it only sparked more. Even before its release, Eyes Wide Shut was no longer just a film. It had become something larger, stranger, and far more disturbing. Kubrick's death triggered a wave of conspiracy theories, each more twisted and elaborate than the last. And while none of them can be proven, they carry a chilling kind of pull, equal parts terrifying and impossible to ignore.
They lived in a parallel universe to us. They could do what they want. They made people who didn't fit in disposable. The system protected it. Tom Cruise's character, who was guilt-ridden, even protected one of the elites at the beginning of the films without even knowing. The film said more about that and intimacy than anything else. People have rewritten the ending when Nicole Kidman's character essentially said, "We need to have more sex." She didn't quite say it like that. She said it a bit more, let's say, energetically than that. But the point is, it was about reconnecting through intimacy. When you're losing yourself to fantasy and wanting to explore things, the best way to connect, again, truly, is through genuine intimacy with your partner.
Theories. Some believe Kubrick used Eyes Wide Shut to expose questionable practices within Scientology. One scene in particular caught people's attention. At the end of the film, Bill and Alice walk through a toy store with Helena when the little girl suddenly wanders off, followed by two men in suits. Those same men had appeared earlier in the film at the Christmas party hosted by Victor Ziegler, Bill's friend. According to some, Kubrick was trying to show how his daughter had been pulled away by mysterious figures who had been watching from the very beginning. The Scientology theories didn't have much to stand on. For one, Vivian joined the church while the film was already in production, and the script had been written long before that. In 2014, she shared photos of her father on Twitter, along with a message saying how much she loved him, proof that their relationship hadn't been completely broken.
That was what the ending was about, but people somehow recreated it because their child in the film, was walking out or walking somewhere else, and people thought, oh, they're being taken away. That's not what he was doing, guys. Okay? I've watched the film enough times now. That's not what the film or the scene was about. But this is my point about conspiracies, distrust in the media. We are left to rewrite our own endings because we cannot trust the media. Anytime we question things that go on, whether that is COVID, whether that is this, we are often, earlier, now people are letting us run with it. We are made to look foolish and silly, and it's hard to decipher from the true facts and some AI images out there. The one place where this is exemplified to me the best is Pizzagate.
And remember the Pizzagate? Remember how they talked about pizza?
Yeah. What
well,
about it?
Here it is. It shows up in the Epstein files. I wanted to let you know the crew really appreciated the pizza today. This is from a guy named Roy Hodges to Jeffrey Epstein. I wanted to let you know the crew really appreciated the pizza today. Thank you for letting us do that.
Oh, Roy and Stephanie. That's nice.
Thanks for letting us do that? You mean eat pizza? Of course, that's not what that means. Pizza is obviously a code word for something.
Oh, I wonder what it could be.
Here's another one. This is, we don't know who it's from, but it's to jeevacation@gmail. So I'm going to guess maybe that's Jeffrey Epstein's vacation email. It says, this is better than Ilhan and Chinese cookies. See attached. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand.
This is better than a Chinese cookie? Oh, to say Ilhan means then better than a Chinese cookie.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is better than a Chinese cookie. That's what that's supposed to say, but it says Ilhan. This is better than a Chinese cookie. Let's go for pizza and grape soda again. No one else can understand. So, of course, they had to make anybody who saw pizza who caught on to this, they had to make them out to be crazy.
Pizzagate was treated by the media, in fact, as foolish, something that you could not talk about, something that you were seen as a moron, a quack theory, hocus pocus sort of person. For lack of a better word, you were dismissed. Here's an example of some of their dismissal.
Unbelievable. By the way, it's not just right-wingers. It's progressives who hate Hillary Clinton, too. I got a couple of emails from Progressive Jank, but you need to look into it more.
Okay, yeah, well, you guys are insane, okay? And if you're mad about saying that, I don't care.
By the way, the authorities, because this has become so prevalent, did look into it. And they're like, of course they're not running a sex ring out of a pizza shop. There's no evidence for that. None. No, but but on the other hand, I don't like Hillary Clinton. So maybe she's a satanic child molester.
This is so insane. This is like an episode of Black Mirror, right? And it's all fun and games.
Now the problem is, now when you look back at it, guess who was named in the Pizzagate scandal?
Are you kidding?
And this is the problem with the media. You dismissed us. You dismissed our cries for a genuine investigation into it, a genuine discussion into it, and anyone who tried to discuss it was locked down. Again, I spoke about Michel Foucault's discussion about language, how the control of language, discourse, what can be said and not said is where power reigns, I should say. And we see that the most frequent and apparent in the media. People were dismissed. You can see how TYT spoke about people. They count themselves as new media, but that's just not the truth, is it? Now, where Pizzagate starts being truthful and ends being fictitious, no one genuinely knows. Is it just coincidence? I don't really like coincidences. Or is there more to it? But one thing for certain is we weren't allowed to discuss it. And this is where erosion of trust happened. This is the moment we started creating our own endings. And the media, politicians, law enforcement have everything to do with that. And that brings us to Prince Andrew.
I'm in London. I was so young. Ghislaine woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be trafficked to that prince. And then that night, Prince Andrew came to her house in London, and we went out to Club Tramp. Prince Andrew got me alcohol. It was in the VIP section. I'm pretty sure it was vodka. Prince Andrew was like, "Let's dance together." And I was like, okay. And we leave Club Tramp, and I hop in the car with Ghislaine and Jeffrey, and Ghislaine said he's coming back to the house, and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that even royalty were involved.
A world of pain as well, because there's new claims that have emerged. Okay, this is truly bizarre. That taxpayers footed the bill for Andrew's happy endings.
Okay?
Hey! So 2 reports out of London have claimed that the former Duke of York charged British people for treatments which he received while he was, trying to represent UK abroad.
That's a good euphemism.
Well, I think we can put 2 and 2 together. 10 years he spent as the country's international trade ambassador, and he charge the taxpayer.
Where are those changes? This is less about my venom towards the monarchy. Do I believe Britain should be a republic? I have a bias to it, of course. It's also the victims. These are children, mostly young people that were victimized. These are people, if you look at the structure as well, doing things out of fear. What changes, structural changes, so another Prince Andrew doesn't emerge, another Jeffrey Epstein doesn't emerge, another, allegedly, Bill Clinton doesn't emerge? How do we change the structure from within? How?
I'm a journalist, you're a journalist. Think about this. There's a massive story to do with Andrew Epstein, the arrest, everything. William is at BBC. You are a BBC News journalist. You are running a news desk. Why on earth wouldn't you send a journalist down to doorstep him when he leaves the building? Why not? I mean, why is that absurd? But as I say it, I know that it will never, ever happen. The BBC would never, ever do that. Why not? That is journalism. And again, as the public face of a really powerful institution alongside alongside King Charles, I do not see why William and Charles should not be made to answer questions, because this is not a story about, the playboy uncle. This is a story about a powerful institution, and there are questions to be answered about what it knew and when it knew it.
Yeah, I keep saying this. There's many arguments against hereditary monarchy. So the key one is that it's incredibly unfair. If we believe that we live in a country or society where everyone is born equal, then the idea that you can, by virtue of your bloodline, become a very powerful person is offensive. But the more pragmatic reason is that the wrong person might get the job, right? If you don't have a process of selecting people, if it's just by the accident of birth, you might get a real wrong 'un in the job. And if there's any proof of that, it is Andrew. So I think he's sort of like an argument against the monarchy in and of itself, as well as just against this particular rather strange family.
If this is truly a tipping point for people, where is the change? You see, I watched this film for this, and it was called The Ides of March. It's a Ryan Gosling starring film, but George Clooney's there playing a president-elect. It starts off with Ryan Gosling's character being eager-eyed, full of hope and optimism. believing that George Clooney's character is that hope, is that force for change, and through a series of events, I don't want to spoil it for you, he loses his faith and he sees that these people, whether it's left or right, they're actually Democrats in this film. They're bad people, corrupt people, and they harm people, and he did what the system does, and that's protect power, protect the establishment, protect the integrity. And then he ends up harming and threatening and becoming the exact thing that tried to harm and hurt him. If these movies, if these quotes, if these philosophers, if these scholars aren't tells to a system that is broken, a system that does nothing but protect itself, then I don't know what is. I'm pissed! Again, this is exemplified through C. Wright Mills. He discusses as well that power is small, it stays in a cabal, it stays in a unit, and what it does, it creates a network for whether it be military, politicians, and legal. You've seen it here that the media play a hand. They control the language that we use. They control the conversations that we have. The fact that there's no public discussion, widespread discussion about what on earth are the royal family doing. One of the best, and I'm digressing slightly, but one of the best depictions of the royal family was The Crown. And The Crown was essentially telling us that the royal family's job is to seem presentable, is to control optics. That is what they do. They spun it as some sort of symbol of hope, symbol of optimism for Britain. Does this guy inspire you to be a symbol of optimism? Does King Charles, inspire you to be a symbol of optimism? I'll leave the question to you. But genuine questions need to be asked about what is the change. You can go down the rabbit hole of conspiracies like I did. You can try to decipher which is true and which is not. But all roads lead to apathy with people, a sort of trauma numbing that we have. That it's got to a place that these people can be broad day brawling in our face with the debauchery, the excess, and no one does anything about it. A pedo ring was exposed, and we have no real structural change, no calls for it at least. Donald J. Trump has been accused many times of inappropriate, lewd behavior. Many times. No change to even how we bring people into the electoral cycle. Journalism that does soft coverage, that is more about access than truth. Proximity to people that we believe is powerful. There is no change. And I leave you with this quote from Viserys from Game of Thrones.
Power is a curious thing, my lord. Are you fond of riddles?
Why? Am I about to hear one?
3 great men sit in a room, a king, a priest, and a rich man. Between them stands a common sellsword. Each great man bids the sellsword kill the other 2. Who lives, who dies?
Depends on the sellsword.
Does it? He has neither crown, nor gold, nor favor with the gods.
He has a sword, the power of life and death.
But if it's swordsmen who rule, why do we pretend kings hold all the power? When Ned Stark lost his head, who was truly responsible? Joffrey, the executioner, or something else?
I've decided I don't like riddles.
Power resides where men believe it resides.
It kind of ties into the quote that I had from Richard Nixon too, that power lays where people believe it lays. And what it does, it grants these people a complex and some sort of elite immunity, a way that they can move and bend the law in their own way. It's only when it becomes too obvious things really change. We've seen this with celebrities, whether that's R. Kelly, Diddy. We're now seeing it with politicians. We're seeing it with powerful financiers. But yet the structure remains. The structure doesn't change. Now, I pose to you this question. Do you think this was about a satanic ritual worshipping cult that uses children as some sort of sexual or blood sacrifice, allegedly? Or is it about a system that allows powerful people to do what they want and protects them from being caught? Or is it more fearfully, maybe a bit of both? Who knows the truth? I definitely don't. But what I do know is that the call for change does need to happen. But why doesn't it? I really don't know. My final point is that I don't believe Epstein broke the system, or him being removed from the system changed it or did anything to it. I think it finally exposed how these networks really work. We got a sort of window glance into how and what goes on in some of these rooms, and how information, power and laws are exchanged and made. They're made at parties, they're made through access, they're made potentially and allegedly through bribes. Again, till things really change, where we agree with the semantics of things, could differ, but we do all know that there's change needed. I wonder what it'll take for that to happen. I really do. But I'll give you my due. Put into the comments what you think of this episode. Please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'm out.
Jeffrey Epstein has been found dead in his jail cell.
They really bought it.